Good afternoon, all my colleagues at COR Indian chapter, my panelists, and members of the audience. I'm happy to see a lot of young faces for a change, and I think it's very important going forward that you are the Z generation, as they call it, which is going to now spring forth a lot of the changes that we are going to see in the next near future. Now, the topic that we have in front of us is employment opportunities in investment, in infrastructure and environment. It's very interesting that we are here at the Mumbai Stock Exchange, and I will start with a very funny but also a bit of a sad anecdote that happened to me about a month back in Mumbai. I was introduced to one of India's largest and most famous stockbrokers, and I went to his office. This was to engage with him for a charitable cause. And of course, he was sitting there in his office with 15 different screens in front of him. And I spoke to him about my request. And then I very candidly asked him, Sir, you are obviously making many billions, millions of rupees and dollars, and what do you see as the future for Indian industry and the Indian stock market? And he said, it's wonderful. All our industrialists are brilliant. They are making a lot of money, tons of money. So I said, excellent, that's really good to hear. I said, what are your indicators of the balance sheets of most of these corporate enterprises when it comes to due diligence on resources, on the environment, and on climate change? So he looks up at me with his mouth open and says, Mr. Bilimoria, you know, you are not so smart. Our industrialists are much smarter. We know how to make money, and we know how to tackle issues when they come up. To which I, of course, said, God bless you, sir. And in my mind, I also said, God save you, sir. So this is the background. I'm saying this particularly because of the mindset in a strata of our society today, which I think is so important because it needs largely these initiatives of change, mindset, need to be transformed from that top level, trickle-down effect. It needs to be there. And if this is the mindset that we have up there, I fear it may not be too much good news. Anyway, coming back to employment opportunities in infrastructure and environment, we need to move no further than this hall. As a prime example, a wonderful working model, a proof of concept in development alternatives. To my mind, it has embraced all three, employment, infrastructure, and environment, brilliantly in what they have been doing in the past number of years. You cannot get a better proof of concept than development alternatives and the work they have been doing in a section of India. If this model could easily be grown organically to various other parts of the country and globally, I think then we have resolved a lot of the problems that we are facing today going forward. Dr. Khosla needs a big applause for the efforts that he's put in towards this, and for the Z generation, which I find increasingly now is moving towards that method and mind view of thinking. I think it's so important to embrace the model that Ashok has developed. It's amazing. Congratulations, Ashok. Coming back to the talks that we had this morning with Mr. Ram Madhav and about skill development, he mentioned something about the farmers and the farming community. And because I have been in the efforts of climate change and environment and new technologies relating to climate change, decarbonization, carbon sequestration, a thought came to my mind. He said, you know, the farmers, they may not have any more work in the next few years down the road. And I thought to myself, the farmers basically have a DNA of working with the environment, of working with the soil. Today, one of the most important things that a country like India needs, which is largely agrarian, is soil remediation. Can you imagine, if farmers are losing their potential in their farming jobs, set them up, let the government, let private, let public sector engage in getting them into soil remediation initiatives. This can only be a winner. Apart from that, they can be immersed also in reforestation, which again is so important, not just for India, but for the planet at large, because we really need to bring down those gigatons of carbon sitting out there back into the soil. Now, everyone will think, and most businesses and industry think that, oh, you know, we have to sit back, hold back, because this is going to change and disrupt our entire business models as we currently speak. They're actually wrong, because here we are sitting on more than $1 trillion of business lying not just in renewables, which includes carbon sequestration, which includes ocean reforestation, there's sustainable infrastructure, there's employment, the environment, and you have a healthcare, and you've got a whole lot of features which build out of this whole thing of a new green paradigm, as they call it. Also, one must not forget that we have been endowed historically with the great Indian traditional village culture, which for some reason seems to be lost in our path towards rapid development. And I have mentioned this at various forums. When people are talking about smart cities, I say, let us engage with smart villages first. I think that is so important, because that is the breeding ground where all your change happens. And if you can bring about a smart village, it gradually then evolves into a smart city, and your whole mindset then changes to go further. Coming back to environment and infrastructure, we do know that there are a huge number of technologies in the marketplace today. I'm currently working with something known as a waterless cement, which is called sulfurite, which is quite amazing because you don't use any water. You use a byproduct of petroleum refining, which is sulfur, which is normally discarded. And the beauty is that this cement cures in 5 hours. So can you imagine when you need to build roads, you need to build dams, you need to build bunkers, you need to build aircraft runways, you can have your time lab reduced by almost 60 to 70% by just this method of quick curing. And then you've got things like, waterless, there's something known as aeroponics, which is again farming in greenhouses without water and without soil. What it uses is it uses an inkjet dispersal spray which sprays nutrients onto the roots of the plant, and then you actually can get cultivation happening. Now, this is already working models that are taking place in Europe as we speak. Very interesting was last week when I was in Luxembourg, I had a meeting with this very large, one of the largest furnace manufacturing companies in the world called Paul Worth. Now, one of their largest customers is Tata Steel in India. And it's quite amazing. One of their primary focuses is green steel, taking green steel forward. And I'm saying this purely because looking at the construction industry, I think it's so important that if we can get more than one element to be labeled with a green tag, I think it adds so much more. And then the iron and steel business also moves on to automobiles and other sectors, which is so important as well. Now, I think it's very important also that we check the role of information technology in the field of employment, infrastructure, and environment. And I'll give you a small example. I was working with Tata Trust, and one of the projects that they had was around fisheries. And it's very interesting that they've developed with local NGOs models where you can, on your apps they give to the fishermen, they can actually assess and define where the shoals of fish are moving around in their particular vicinity in the oceans. And this on itself is a huge achievement because it makes it that much more easier to fisher folk to monitor exactly where the fish are, how much they can catch, and how much they need to leave behind to regenerate themselves. So I don't want to make this much longer, but I think here we at the Club of Rome, to my mind, has a hugely important role to play as a think tank, because I think we are far more than a think tank. We need to see ourselves as being initiators of a change, and unless we are the change, we cannot transform that change to everyone like you people around you. The change must come from within us. We need to redefine, we need to reinvent ourselves in everything that we do from now on, because the world is changing enormously, and this is not a threat. The issue is, this is a huge opportunity. And for you young people over here, you need to go out and tell your families and your friends that, you know, there is something for us out there. If we can make our minds think differently, as I said, reinvent ourselves, I think we've got a huge opportunity ahead of us. And with this, I would like to